Hi, my name is Angelica Vasquez Ortega. My area of expertise is geochemistry, and I am an assistant professor at Bowling Green State University. Today's topic title is Assessing the Effects of Lake Dredged Sediments on Soil Health, Agricultural and Environmental Implication in Midwest Ohio. I want to start this presentation by acknowledging my students, which they work in this project very hard and produce all this data. So here is my master's student, Russell, and I have four undergraduate students, Adam, Emily, Sarah, and Hannah, which they help with this project. So I want to thank the Ohio Lake Erie Commission, the Center for Undergraduate Research and Scholarship, and the Geology Foundation at BGSU because they help funding this project. So a little bit of background about dredging and dredged sediments. So here we are seeing in this map the Western Lake Erie Basin, and in red and blue we have the federal navigational channels, which are dredged every year, and they have to be dredged in order for the vessels and the boats to move goods in this area. Currently, when these sediments are being dredged, they are disposed by open lake disposal. But these sediments are very rich in nutrients, heavy metals in some instances, not so much in the Toledo Harbor, but they can contaminate the water column by redistributing organic matter and nutrients. Also, the benthic community can be affected. So the state of Ohio created a Senate bill in which by July 2020, it's gonna be prohibiting the open water disposal of dredge. And this implies that we need to find a beneficial use for dredged sediments. So the beneficial use that I wanna propose is, instead of doing what it has been done for many years, which is no longer gonna be able to do it in Lake Erie, now I wanna incorporate into the crop rotation dredged sediment as a farm amendment. As manure, for instance, is being applied, or biosolids, or even synthetic fertilizers. So in this table here, I'm showing you the chemical characterization of the dredged material, and also I'm comparing that to optimal values that a farm soil should have. An example that I want to bring is the cation exchange capacity. The dredged sediment has 35, and it's expected to be 21 and around so. The bioavailable phosphorus have to be between 15 and 40, and the dredged sediment has 38. And in general, other major cations also have optimal concentrations to be used as an amendment in farm soils. So all these different chemical characteristics of the dredge made the dredge a really good amendment, an amendment that is going to be improving soil health in many different aspects, for instance, in their biological health, chemical, and also physical health. So here are the specific research goals for this project, and we use a greenhouse approach. And what we want to aim is to quantify the effect on soil health when these farms are being amended with various ratios of dredged sediments. Also, we mimic storm events, and we want to see how these nutrients that are contained with the dredged sediments are being lost into the waterways. And finally, we want to quantify how the dredged sediment is affecting the soybean below biomass and also the crop yield. So here I'm showing you an experimental setup. We use mesocosms with no plants, mesocosms with plants. In this case, the plant that we used was soybean. And we also did this at different ratios: 100% farm soil, 10% dredged sediments, 20% dredged sediments, and then 100% dredged sediments. Why we choose a different amount of ratios? Well, it is very unlikely that a farmer will put their crops in 100% dredge. So they're gonna be mixing somehow the dredge with their soil. So we are here proposing 10 and 20%. Okay, so here is a flow chart including all the different parameters that we measure, but the ones in bold are the ones that I'm gonna be discussing in this presentation. So we look at the solid characterization of the soil, the grains, and the plant tissue, and we measure nutrients, crop yield, and biomass, as well as we look at the percolated solution, and we also look at the nutrition of the nutrient content in that water that it's being exported from the mesocosms. Okay, so now moving into the story, what I want to tell from this experiment, so results and implications. And the first point that I want to bring is the effects of dredged sediment amendment on soil health. So this table here is a very comprehensive table. I'm going to walk you through. The first two columns are at the time of collection. So no experiment has been done. We collected this from the farm, and then also we collected the water dredge. Okay, and these are all those different chemical characterizations. Then we have other values at 123 days, which is the time at harvesting with no soybean, and then 123 also when we harvested the soybean with the soybeans, okay? And I'm gonna show you plots, so don't get overwhelmed with this table. Just a few points to discuss here. As we observed, we saw that the cation change capacity is higher in the 100% dredge. Another very important point to bring here is that you notice that the phosphorus concentration is 110. And this is considered to be a legacy phosphorus site, meaning that it has higher concentration of phosphorus than what the plants need. The agronomical ratio is, around 40 ppm, parts per million. So this is exceedingly high. And so calcium concentration also very rich in the dredged sediment, and also organic carbon. And most of the data in this section here, I'm gonna be discussing in figures. So let's move on. Okay, so here what I have is the soil organic carbon concentration as a function of dredge amendment. And what we can see is that there is an increase in soil organic carbon as we put more dredge. And this was significant. And it is very important because we know that high concentration of organic carbon are improving soil fertility, water holding capacity, and so on. So the next point that I want to show you is how it changed the cation change capacity, how it changed as the dredged sediments were, increasing in ratio. So they increase, and very slightly a increase in pH, being a little bit more alkaline. And this is because the dredged sediments contain inorganic carbon. So here I'm showing you the calcium concentration as a function of dredge, and we can see an incremental increase, and this was significant. And again, calcium, it's a very important macronutrient. So another physical parameter that we observed was the bulk density, and that as more dredge was put in place, the bulk density decreased. This was not significant, but the average decreased as the dredge ratio increased. And this is very important because we don't want a compacted soil, okay? A lower bulk density means better root penetration and water percolation and so on. Okay, so now let's move to point number 2, which is about the effect of dredged sediments amendment on crop yield and biomass. So what I'm showing here is the soybean yield as a function of different dredge ratios. And the average was not significantly different here, meaning that there was no effect on the dredge ratio. But again, we need to point out that this is a greenhouse experiment, and the next step will be to see how this is actually changing in an actual farm. The average for the root system increased slightly, but again, it was not significant, but at least we can see some sort of trend or effect with the root system. So here I'm having many different figures. What I want to show you is how the carbon concentration, phosphorus concentration, and nitrogen concentration changes in the beans, the leaf, and the roots. And I'm going to just select a few of them to discuss a little bit more. So in terms for the soybean, the average total organic carbon concentration did not change significantly, but many different changes were observed in the root system. So for instance, for total phosphorus, there was an incremental increase as more dredge was put. So more phosphorus was bioaccumulated into the root system, and the same was observed with nitrogen. This figure here, this images here are showing the differences in the density of the root system as we increase the dredge sediment ratio. And what we can observe is that the more dredge, the more bulky is that root system. More finer roots and more hairs were observed in those roots. So, and the last point that I want to bring is nutrient loss into waterways. Remember that we mimic storm events and we wanted to know how much of these nutrients are being lost into the waterways. We want to make sure that putting dredge sediments will not hinder or create any detrimental effects on water quality. So what we observe here in this plot, what we have is the phosphate load as a function of time. These days correspond each day in which we mimic a storm event. And here we have different treatments: 100% farm, 10% dredge, 20% dredge, and 100% dredge. What we observe is that as we move towards this soybean growth stage, R3, which correspond to the formation of those first pods, forming those first pods, a huge amount of phosphate was removed from the solution, meaning it was bioaccumulated into the biomass. And it makes sense because the plants need this phosphate to build cells, DNA, and so on. So the next one that I want to show you is the total nitrate load concentration, the total nitrate loads, in the system. So again, as a function of storm events, time, and what we observe is, again, a huge decrease towards that R3 stage, meaning again that these soybean plants are bioaccumulated nitrate into their system. And again, this can be part of forming that DNA, makeup, and other different biomass. So I want to finalize this presentation by talking about, summarizing again some of the agricultural implications and some of the environmental implications. So I show you that increasing the dredge sediment also increase the total organic carbon concentration, the cation exchange capacity, the calcium content, and the pH was slightly more alkaline. On the other hand, in this legacy P side, we observed that adding dredge diluted the phosphorus in the soil. And then finally, adding more dredge decreased the average of the bulk density over time. And this is very important again because it's going to be improved the root penetration and water infiltration, increased porosity, and so on. So for the environmental implications, we observed that when soybean plants were present in the system, the nutrient export into the percolated water decreased due to the bioaccumulation of nitrate and phosphorus into the into the biomass. So finally, a conclusion that I can bring up to this point is that dredge sediments are a viable fertilizer source for farm soils, and specifically in this case for soybean. And this is very important because we want to compare this dredge amendment with, for instance, other synthetic or organic amendments that are being currently used, which we know that they can improve the crop yield, but also they can have detrimental effects in water quality. So it seems that the dredge sediments are providing nutrients, but they are not exporting so much nutrients. So finally, I wanna say thank you to my research team. All of these guys and ladies here help collecting and analyzing this data. And I wanna thank you all for listening to this presentation. Thank you so much. Bye.